So I went to Warwick Castle yesterday and it was a very good day. I lost my gloves though. I walked out the house with them because it was a cold day. I was thinking I might need them. I remember having them and my phone and a plastic bag. I put the plastic bag in my pocket and the phone in my pocket, and I was thinking I was going to wear the gloves, and that was the last time I remember seeing them. So I think it's highly likely that I left them on the bus or perhaps on the train. I don't really know, and my hair looks absolutely embarrassing. But I positive side, I bought some socks instead, and they're princess ones, and it's got Warwick Castle. It actually says Warwick Castle on them. Yay! But yes, I bought two pairs. And my mum also was here. She's been here for a few days, and for the first time, she's actually acknowledged that Birmingham is far worse than it was. You know, she came back. She came to me on Friday, and arrived at about 1 a.m. or something. And she admitted when on the bus, you know, today was the first time I've ever walked Birmingham, walked to your house, and felt unsafe. Well, why is that? You know, like seriously, the number of times I have told her that Birmingham has become unsafe and dangerous, and that it's being taken over by Muslims. I've said this to her about 50 times. And then for her to say it in such a, you know, is it just me? Like, she literally said it in those words. Is it just me? Or is Birmingham becoming a lot more unsafe? You know, I was coming back to your house last night and there was just this really weird feeling, like something was wrong. You know, God, like seriously, I've been telling you this so many times. She literally thinks that I'm talking to scammers. When she saw me in and out and rustling all that stuff behind and ruining my video and just, she literally believes that I am talking to scammers and con artists who have conned me into thinking that I'm God. I could try and explain to her that actually no one has contacted me, not even one person like writing to me, like there are very few comments on my page. I could explain to her that, but she would actually believe that because she would then think that no one is watching my videos and that I am literally just talking to a camera and getting no response. You know, that is literally what she thinks, and it's so incredibly annoying. To know that you're God, to know that you're God for 14 years, to have nothing but a couple of people insult you on the only comments that I ever fucking get are people telling me that I'm mad and insane for thinking that I created the universe, even though I have never once said that I've created the universe. Yes, I saw a message this morning saying, you know, you're mentally ill because you think you created the universe. When did I say that? When did I say that? I have never said that. Being God and creating the universe are two different things. Okay, gods create gods. This is how gods form. They're not, gods do not come before universe. Universe then gods. That's my order. Now, if I haven't said that, then what? Why do you say? I don't know. So many people just jump to conclusions, aren't interested in the truth, and it's just incredibly frustrating because it's been 14 years. I know people know. I know thousands of people know. And yet I'm frustrated as to why no one is actually doing anything about this news. This news is not getting anywhere. This news is not in the news. Why is it not in the news? Why are people not giving a shit? It's so frustrating. But yeah. I don't understand why the people who know, the singers and celebrities who know, who have obviously, some of them have stopped making music, and I feel like they've done that because they know they're pissing me off, and they know that they've done nothing to actually help me in any way. You know, their songs do not promote me, they do not put me in a good light, they do not do anything other than anger me. I understand that they are angered, you know, if they've had 10 lives before, probably more than that, you know, if a life is 70 years and a lot of people die when they're 20, you know, you probably had a lot more than 10 lives. In the sense of dying and being reincarnated into a new body. You know, if you've gone through lots and lots of that, I know that you are probably incredibly pissed off with God. And if you found out that I was God, you might want to express your rage in your music. So I understand that. If I saw it from my higher self's perspective, then I would probably understand a lot of people's frustration and hatred of God. But yeah, my mum is just such an annoying person. Such an annoying person. She doesn't understand anything. And then to have her just be like... and she also noticed on the way back, because she was... When I was trying to say, yeah, I told you Birmingham is getting worse, she was just like, oh, I shouldn't have said anything now. I wish I hadn't have said anything. You're going to see this as proof. Everything you're watching online, it's not true. It's all lies. Everything you're watching. She literally thinks that every single thing that I'm watching about all these crimes are lies. I know some of them are. I know some of them are fake. I know some of them could be just exaggerating. There is something wrong with Islam. Islam is a religion that does not serve God. Now, that is what is wrong with Islam. It is a false religion about a false God and a prophet that's a paedophile and a warlord and anyone who would say that is the God, the religion I want to worship. They are basically worshipping nothing, because they believe in nothing. They do not believe in God. They do not wear the veils to honor God. They wear the veils to honor man's religion and the religion that man has created. And if you think that their babies are going to be just as intelligent as other babies, no, because God has created the timeline. God has created the timeline, and she has designed the matrix so that if stupid idiots have kids, the matrix is going to find souls that are equally as stupid and is going to put those souls in those bodies. Now, if there is a bunch of male pedophiles that are going around raping kids, and whilst thinking, oh, what's wrong? She's a 12-year-old. She got pregnant. God allowed her to get pregnant, so that's fine. I mean, yes, okay, she's going to be only 12 years older than this child, and she's probably going to spend the whole of her life hating this child for getting pregnant. When I got pregnant when I was in my past life, when I was a K woman, I got pregnant when I was 12. There was no such thing as abortions back then because doctors didn't exist, words didn't exist, language didn't exist, beds didn't exist, nothing existed. And you know what, maybe that's the reason why I don't want to have kids in this life, because of this subconscious memory that I have of having a child when I was way too young, not even liking that child probably because I didn't even want it in the first place. And then if you wanted to go and tell me how there's absolutely nothing wrong with a 12-year-old having kids, that 12-year-old is going to grow up feeling like, why the fuck did this happen to me? Why the fuck did some pedo do this to me just so I can have to look after a child? I'm not ready for a child. But if you want to have children, you need to have money, you need to have a house, you need to have a job, you need to get your life first fixed. You need to know what kind of person you like. You need to be old enough to know what type of person you like. You need to be old enough to choose a type of person. And you cannot do that at 12. You need to wait. Even 15 is too young. You need to wait until you're 18, until you've got yourself money, house, a job, taste, personality. A guy should seek a woman who is smarter than him. Why? Because then he can learn from her. If you are an intelligent guy, you would want an intelligent woman who can teach you things, who can make you a better man. Now, if you're going to be dating 12-year-olds, you're going to be making yourself more sick, because you're going to be looking at that little innocent child. She's probably not an innocent child. She's probably was like some sort of old man in her past life, and now she's just died and has gotten a female body. But yeah, if you're you're a 50-year-old man who just looks at a 12-year-old and thinks, wow, I want to have sex with that, you're going to make yourself incredibly unintelligent by just thinking about, oh, she's got a vagina, that's all I need. That's you are lowering your standards by dating a child. Now, if you're going to say that there's nothing wrong with dating a child, well, how would you feel if your mother was 12 years older than you and she doesn't actually like you? She doesn't actually care about you. She doesn't care if you get run over, and she doesn't care if it's because she never wanted you. Don't you think that that's going to be a problem? Being brought up by a mother who's 12 years older than you and didn't want to have you and didn't even know how to have children or didn't know what sex equals. People, a lot of 12-year-olds might not even know that how you have a child by having sex. And if she's raped or if she's married off at the age of 6, sometimes it can be, if you've brought up like that, your mother probably doesn't give a shit about you. Now, if you want to be a child of a mother who doesn't give a shit about you, then that is what happens in Muslim communities because of this sort of child abuse. And okay, it happens in Hindus, it happens in a lot of religions I know, and it used to happen in Christianity too before they got smart and stopped doing it. But it's through the suffering that you've learned to become better. And if you haven't gone through the suffering, maybe you won't understand it. And that is the difference between an older soul and a younger soul. Older souls understand things because they have gone through traumas in their past life. And okay, they won't remember their past life. That's a good thing. But they will feel the trauma of it. Partly maybe the reason why I don't actually really want to have a child is because of the trauma that I went through when having a child when I was 12 and realizing that I've got no money, money didn't exist back then, so I don't think I didn't have anything to be able to provide for that child. So I probably grew up not liking that child. And so if I've grown up in this life not really wanting a child, well, it's probably because of that. So if you think there's no side effects of children having kids, then I think you're an idiot. And I just saw, Bob on the stools. There was some video clip of Tommy Robinson posting Bob on the Stools saying, if you abortion is wrong, come and explain to me why it's wrong, or prove me that I'm wrong. I would have loved to find that stall and just stand in front of him and just give him like 100 reasons why abortion is not wrong. Well, one, if you're a 12-year-old and you have a kid, you're not going to want that child because you're not going to be able to look after that child. You're not going to be able to provide for that child. If you're 15, you're not even going to probably want the child because you're going to want to like get a job. You want to make yourself in a good position first. You want to have a family where you can have a partner that actually stays around and not someone that just likes you because you're 12 and then, oh look, 10 years later you're not 12, you're 20, you're 22 and he no longer likes you. Why? Because he only liked you because you were a child, and you guess what, children don't stay children forever. There's so much anger that I feel when it comes to child marriage. If you marry someone because they're a child, you're marrying them because they're innocent. Now, innocent people, they're not actually innocent people. So by thinking that they're innocent when they might not be, in their past life they could have been terrorists, they could have been any sort of thing, and that's why that's why they've been born into a Muslim family. Why? Because Muslims have this false religion, this false belief, this false perception on what's true and what's not, and the Matrix knows that they are worshipping lies, so the Matrix will find other people who worship lies and think, you know what, you're a good match for each other. You were a man who got a 12-year-old pregnant, so this time we're going to make you a 12-year-old woman, a 12-year-old female, and your parents want to sell you off to some older man. And if you ask a 50-year-old man who doesn't think there's anything wrong with marrying a 12-year-old, ask him, if you died, got a new body as a female and became 12, would you want some 50-year-old pervert doing stuff to you, knowing that in 5 years time when you're sort of 18, 19, 20, you're probably not even going to remember any of that stuff, or you'll remember mild stuff, but you'll just feel abused. You'll feel abused, used. You might have a couple of children by that time as well. I mean, how would you feel towards your children if you knew that the only reason why you had them is because you were forced into a relationship that you didn't want, and this was happening because abortion was banned? Other reasons why abortion is bad is because a lot of people don't have the money or the facilities or abilities. My sister does not have the ability to look after a baby, and if it weren't for her partner, a new partner, social services would have taken any kid that she has off her, and they would have enjoyed doing that because they would have made lots of money out of it. But okay, that charges huge amounts of expense onto the taxpayer, because a lot of people who have kids that can't look after them do just become a burden of the taxpayer. Taxpayers pay a huge amount of money for these unwanted kids, and an unwanted kid is a child that the Matrix has looked in, realised that the mother can't look after them, so she's got the Matrix would have looked to other souls who have a similar ability, or lack of ability, should I say, to the mother, and then she would bring, or the father as well, and then they would reincarnate that soul. And well, do you really want all these stupid souls being born? There's a difference between a smart soul and a dumb soul. Dumb souls cannot do things. They cannot learn fast. They cannot achieve as much. They do not have as much character. I noticed in the food bank thing that I did the other day, there was a lot of Muslims. There wasn't as many as usual. Usually there was loads of Muslims, but this time there was a couple of Muslims, and then there was a couple of white people. And okay, the white people did look a bit like drug addicts, but they had a lot of character. They had a lot of kind of personality. Okay, they were shouting a little bit, but they were full of sort of vibe, energy, and passion. Whereas the Islamic ones that were railing just looked very calm. I was very calm too, so I can't insult that. But at the same time, it's just like, there was a difference, there was I feel like when you have more souls, you get more personality. You become yourself. You become more driven in your own likings, knowing what you like, knowing what you hate. And younger souls are more just susceptible. Oh, I want to listen to what you like, and I'll like whatever you like. And so they're very they're far more easily manipulated and stuff. And I like personality, because that's what makes a person you. That's what makes you liking your interest, your personality and stuff. And yeah, and if you start having lots and lots of babies and you can't look after them, and then the goal, the plan, or the intention is to literally just give them away to social services, the matrix will recognize that these children will not have good opportunities. They will probably always be in the bottom of the barrel because of not feeling like their mum wanted them, and they're going to have this horrible life of feeling like they weren't meant to be born. And how would you want to live your life if you knew you weren't meant to be born? I mean, okay, there might be some adoption cases where it works out, and the parents, there's some parents that are desperately wanting a child, and you know what, if that's the case, the matrix will sense that there are couples that maybe can't have kids and really want children, and they might seek to find a child, and then the matrix will say, right, this child might not be that similar to the birth parents, but it knows the future. It knows it seeks the energy and the passion and the wishes of this couple that's looking to adopt, and it will give them that soul. But a lot of parents who adopt are adopting, but they're adopting for the sake of the child. They want to help the child. But if they have that kind of mindset, they might find that maybe they do end up having a child later on. Maybe it just took them a year or two longer to get pregnant, and then they've got two children, and they might find that the adopted one, is more violent or harder to manage. Children are very stubborn and very, they can be very difficult, and you can say, all right, this is not working out, we've got our own now, we can't look after this other one's causing us too many problems, and then that child is just going to be passed around from family to family, and the whole life that is going to grow up to have is going to be far less good than that of it just not being born, and then its soul being put into another body, and getting an actual family where he thinks, this is what the matrix has planned for me. Why? Because this matrix knew that the parents would stay in my life. The parents would adopt me. Some parents can't do it in the first 2-3 years. My sister is going to be better the older the child gets. Right now, it's still she couldn't do it on her own. But in a year or two, I think when the child has a bit more sense of awareness, I think then my sister would be, if they were to split up. I'm hoping they don't split up. But yeah, if they were, she would have more. There'll be a point where it will be okay. And to be honest, children under 6, they blank out their memories. When I have no memory really of anything under 12. Like, okay, a couple of things, but my memories of things under 12 is very, very minimal. And I think social services need to focus on what a person's going to be when they become a useful adult and a useful member of society. So I do support, not necessarily adoption or adoption if the parents really want it, but if they're just trying to do a favour for the child, then I think it'd actually be better just to set up sort of under 6 orphanages and let them live in some sort of orphanage until they're over 6, and then most parents can look after a child that's 6 or above, and some parents. But you know what? If I think the only reason why the standard of my family has gotten so bad is because my mum's mum was adopted. So the matrix knew that this soul, my mum's mum, was going to be an unwanted child. So the matrix has found. So maybe there was like sort of 10th lifers in my family, or 8th lifers in my family, and then they thought, well, this is going to be an unwanted child, so let's go and find a 5th lifer. All right, there's a 5th lifer, and then she too also had some kids, and then ended up throwing them into the adoption system, and so they thought, well, she's a 5th lifer, we're going to find a 3rd lifer, and then so my mum's mum would have been a 3rd lifer, and well, she did keep my mum, but yeah, she also died when she was my mum was 29 or something. So, but I don't think that's the problem. But my mum's dad was also an adopted person. He was adopted though at later age, but there's just loads and loads of adoptions in my family, and I think the reason why my mum is such an idiot, whereas my dad he's not hugely bright, but he's not an idiot. I wouldn't call him an idiot, and I think the reason why my mum, her soul is an idiot, and I think the reason why her soul has entered into my mum's gene pool is because of all these adoptions and unwanted births, and so therefore, if you're going to start telling me that there's nothing wrong with abortion, that abortion is wrong, then I'm going to completely disagree with you, because I think the only reason why my mum was born into a sort of this family in England is because of all these adoptions. You know, adoptions started happening in England, and therefore the quality of the English person became far less because of all these adoptions and people popping out babies that they can't afford to look after. So the Matrix thinking, well, these children aren't going to have good opportunities, so we're going to find less good quality souls and we're going to put them in there. And this is how my mum's been born. I was a less good quality soul. Why? Because I was a cave woman. I was illiterate and I didn't have any of these, you know, so I don't know why it's taken me 23,000 years to come back as a human. It's taken me a very long time. I think this was maybe because I was 23,000 years ago, I would have been considered to be a complete new soul. Hence, I wasn't part of the dinosaur souls. I was not a dinosaur. I was not an animal. And I think the Matrix has favored the dinosaurs first because they were on Earth a lot more. So all those dinosaur souls got reincarnated, and over the times, they've been fiddled out, and eventually the population got so big that the Matrix was like, right, we need to get some new souls. And then the Matrix, or maybe it was my higher self that found my soul, knew where my soul was, and then birthed it at this certain time. But there's been a big long period it's happened, and I could only be born to parents of less good a lesser good quality, because based on the life that I lived, the fact that I couldn't speak English or write or read or speak or anything, you know, I would have been considered to be a low end. So if my mum hadn't have birthed me, I would have gotten a different mum, but she too would have been of a less good quality. And I'm trying to work out why my gene pool has ended up being a less good quality, and my theory is that there was lots of adoptions, lots of people giving out, thinking it's wrong to kill a child, kill a fetus. I shouldn't kill a child. You know, I believe that a birthday is called birthday because that was the day that the soul was birthed into the body, and it's I think it comes out maybe when the water breaks. That's when the soul enters into a body, and that's when there's two souls in a body, that's when the body needs to kind of separate, and the birth happens. So I think the soul gets into a body. It's not like a kangaroo. Kangaroos are different. I think a kangaroo soul actually enters into it when it's still a fetus looking thing, but that was very strange. But kangaroos from Australia, they're upside down, so they do things differently, but yeah. That's I don't know, but I could have a very, very long conversation as to why souls are why abortion isn't wrong, and yeah, the type of life that you give a child should be more important than the number of lives and stuff like that. And I could have a very long conversation, aggressive argument with him over why. I could say, you know, all the reasons why all the crime happens, you know, that these are probably happening from children that from a lot of them are probably birthed from parents that couldn't give them a good upbringing, couldn't have the money, maybe had too many to look after. Maybe if they're working really hard to try and pay for this large family, you know, who's going to be looking after the children? You know, if the children are going to be looking after the children, then the children are just going to be influenced by other children, and that's also a negative thing. Whereas if you have 2 children, you know, you could give them a good life. If you have 6 children, well, you're probably going to have to expect the older children to start looking after the younger children. Now if the children are being influenced by 12-year-olds, if the 6-year-old children are being looked after and cared for mostly by the 12-year-old, 13-year-old, you know, the 12, 13-year-old might not care as much, they might not be around, they might not be supported, might not be capable enough to look after their brothers and sisters whilst the parents work and stuff, or they're going to have to live off the taxpayers are going to have to pay for these large families, and that's incredibly unfair. And I could literally write down probably 200 reasons why abortion is not wrong, and why it's actually better for society, the family, and, you know, everything. Sometimes sacrifice needs to happen, and if sacrifice means not having children and sacrificing fetuses, then I am very, very in favour of that.